You know, the COVID-19 pandemic has had significant impact on the world. It has affected every fabric of life. The impact in the church is particularly far-reaching. You might have noticed that I said the impact on the church is, and not the impact on the church was. Why? Well, while many institutions have returned to normal, the church is still struggling in this regard. During the lockdowns, online service became popular. Now the world has opened up, but for some reason or the other, many of the members have chosen to stay online. That is to attend church online. Today on Let's Talk, we will be discussing virtual church. Does it satisfy the instructions given in Hebrews 10 and verse 25, which states that we should not forsake the assembling of ourselves together? My guest on Let's Talk today is Pastor Royston Filbert, the Communications Director of the Caribbean Union. Pastor Filbert has had a distinguished career both as a pastor and as a communications, family life, ministerial director for the North Caribbean Conference. And at the last Caribbean Union Conference session earlier this year, he was elected to be the communications director for the Caribbean Union. I'm delighted to have him with us this evening. Just before you hear his face though, we would like to invite you to bow your heads with us for a word of prayer. Father, be with us, grant us your peace, your blessings, as we discuss this very important subject. Take full control and have your own way. In Jesus' name, amen. Pastor Filbert, welcome. It's a delight to have you on Let's Talk. Good afternoon.
Good. Remarks we did for those who are on second-handed radio. So it appears that we have not extremely work to our social media platform. I guess to those who are also listening and viewing on second-handed radio. It's always a pleasure to dialogue on matters like these, and it's really a joy to be with you. So we can run the room for a few minutes. I look forward to an engaging discussion on what I consider to be a very relevant topic that meets the need not only for us who discuss it, but for all those who are listening on UPSC Rural Activities around the world. Thank you so much and welcome to everyone.
It's a delight to have you, Pastor. I know that there are lots of folks in Antigua who are happy to hear your voice and to see your face. Well, you know, you're correct. Yes, we are on Second Advent Radio, so there are lots of folks who are listening from various quarters around Antigua and via its streaming platforms, because, you know, people listen to Second Advent from all over the world via the internet. Well, let's get into our discussion today. The virtual space did not happen because of COVID-19, but I think it is safe to say that COVID did expand its reach and its influence. Let us begin by looking at what happened before COVID and the lockdowns. How were things? What was the main idea behind online church back then? Pastor, can you take us to what used to happen before COVID?
Dr. Greene, I dare say that I kind of like your thoughts and your reasoning. I'm trying to find out what's the catch behind the question, because really and truly, while the question may be very relevant, we also need to understand that that question cannot be subject to bias in its nature. And I don't know how well it's being framed from the perspective its landed in 2008 and even broadcast sermons around the world. And currently, that congregation, that church, has an average weekly attendance of 50 to 70,000 people. And this is the type of church that is not unique by any means. For example, may I also state that many American non-Adventist churches have created large congregations with online broadcasting platforms, dealing with the TD Jakes and the True Osteen and so on. So what I'm trying to say is that too often the church looks only look inward when discussing things related to Christian evangelism and ministry. But we cannot make the mistake of only using Adventist ministries and programs as a reference for going forward, for forward growth as a church. Let's take Adventists around the world. We have the Open University, we have the Western Media Conference, the Central Media Conference. We have seen an explosion of internet church references around the world. But in the Caribbean, what COVID has done, it has exposed us to the reality of what we can do and the opportunities that's available to us as a church. So what is actually happening that we saw?
Pastor, let me interrupt you a little bit. I'm hearing some few of the listeners are indicating that they're not hearing you. So I'm going to try to get that rectified in a moment. Let's see if I can get the attention of my technician. The listeners are saying they're not hearing Pastor Philbert well. So we're going to try to work on that in a minute.
Are you hearing me?
I'm hearing you, but the viewers are saying they're not hearing you. So I'm not sure what the issue is, but we're going to try to see if we can clarify that now. Just give us 1 second. We apologize for this breaking transmission. There is a problem on the audio for our guests, and we're trying to have that corrected in just a moment. We're going to take a short break. We'll be back in a minute. Stay right where you are. Don't move. We are going to try to solve this problem and be back with you on the time. we are sorry for the earlier interruption, but we're here again on Let's Talk, and we are discussing virtual church. We had a interruption, we had a technical difficulty, but we're back, and we trust that you are hearing me. Those of our viewers who shared the concerns of audio just now, it would be nice to hear if you are hearing me. Oh, I'm getting some feedback here. All right, let's see where we are. Good afternoon again. We trust that we are settled now and we are ready to go. With me this afternoon is Pastor Royston Filbert. We are discussing virtual church. We apologize for the earlier interruption. And now we want to welcome back Pastor Filbert. Oh. 1 minute for me, Pastor. Third time, we apologize for the technical difficulties that we have been experiencing, but we believe that we are up and ready now. With me this afternoon is Pastor Royston Filbert. We are discussing here on Let's Talk virtual church, and we attempted to start a few moments ago, but we had some challenges. Pastor Filbert, good afternoon and welcome.
Yes, thank you so much, Dr. Greene. Welcome again. Thank you for having me, and welcome to everyone.
All right, Pastor, we are discussing virtual church. We had some earlier technical difficulties, but we're going to jump back into it. I did share earlier that the pandemic has created a challenge for the church in that since the world has opened back up, many members of the church have chosen to rather remain online. And so they're not attending church as they used to. And my question really is this satisfying the command in Hebrews 10 and verse 25, do not forsake the assembling of ourselves together? But I want to begin really by asking you, Pastor, what were things like before COVID with respect to online services?
Okay, so I began by stating, and I think it's important for me to restate that.
Yes.
As Adventists, we do not operate in a world by ourselves.
in school, we speak about Christian theology, understanding the fact that it's a global opportunity for the church. And when we say the church, we make reference to the Adventist church. But within the perspective of Christianity, when they speak of the church, we speak of all those who are believers in God. And I also indicated that by saying that an example from one of our Christian congregations, let's take Life Church, that started in 1996. The research indicate that church started in a two-car garage and for 20 years, and it has grown now to probably one of the largest churches in America. I also indicated to you that church has a weekly online attendance of over 50 to 70,000 people. This is not unique by any means, because there are many non-American non-Adventist churches that have created, and I purposely use the word created, large congregations with online and broadcasting platforms. So I think those in viewership who are listening today can relate to the T.G. Jakes and the Joel Osteen, and we find that too often the church only looks inward when discussing things related to Christian ministry and evangelism. But we cannot, and I say we cannot make the mistake of only using Adventist ministries and programs as a reference for forward growth or for moving forward. But if we want to use the Adventists, we can go back and use the Oakwood, or we can go to the Jamaica context. And there are several in the Caribbean here that had limited opportunities before them. But COVID, and that's the point, Dr. Greene, COVID has revealed a very startling reality that online opportunities are so enormous, even for larger and smaller congregations. And so the space is there, and the opportunities have become so vast that you find that what COVID has done, it has revealed to us the enormous potential that is available to the church when we begin to have our online services.
But you know, Pastor, I think that is definitely so, that there is, you may want to say, this whole matter of internet technology is an untapped resource for the church. And most definitely we can reach millions around the world with online church. But you're creating a scenario there where perhaps, you know, individuals can be participating in church services without ever having met the pastor personally, without having met other members of the church. Is it possible, therefore, for me to, and I'm just referring this to your comment that I could be a member of an online church with a pastor station in England, and I'm in Antigua, the pastor having not met me. Is that a kind of situation that we're talking about?
Yeah, so I'm going back to this point that, you see, in yonder, and I want you to understand me, Dr. Greene, and probably the online viewers, we have to see the shift that has taken place in the world. And the church needs to be aware of the kind of shift. In the past, what happened is that, you know, we'll pick up a telephone and we'll pick up the phone and we'll call one another. But what it has done, it has created opportunities with platforms. And at the same time, what it has also done, it has allowed people to recognize that even within the social space, we can find communities by which we can relate one to the other. And so it has evolved in the fact that I can be here in one location and minister to people in another congregation, in another part of the world. And so what congregations are realizing, the needs are different, the logistics are different. And so churches are moving now to create new opportunities for churches. And they are now having what you call online congregations, which I am here and you are there, but we can still fellowship and interact. And I hope we can get to that point later on in the conversation. So it is highly possible that I am here, but you are there. But you say that we can never see each other. But you got to understand, Dr. Greene, in this new reality in which we are moving, it is not about seeing, it's about connecting one with the other. And we can connect with each other.
Well, we're going to talk about that some more, definitely. I am not an expert in technology. I'm not going to suggest that by any means, but I do understand that there are different kinds of online platforms. For example, Zoom is different to Facebook Live or YouTube. Can you take us through these differences? And I'm asking for a reason.
Yeah, and so I'm going to just deal with a couple of them. There are several, and I want the online folk to know there are several. There are a multitude of online streaming and messaging platforms, but there are a few of them that has become what we call central to modern life and Christian outreach. So those include Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, and the popular one that everyone uses, Zoom. So just by way of explanation, Facebook is an online social network where individuals can share their profiles, upload photos, join a pre-existing group, or they can even start a new group if they will. The site has many components, including timeline, a space on each user's platform page where users can post their content and friends can share messages. You can upload change your status, which enables the user to alert friends of their current location or their situation in life. And you have news feed, which informs users of changes to the friend's profile and status. Users can chat with each other and they can send each other private messages, okay? Then you talk about Twitter and Instagram. They share similar features to Facebook. The significant difference is that Twitter is for short-term text-based messaging, and Instagram is what you call a short visual form with pictures and short video clips that you can find. Then YouTube. YouTube is a video platform where individuals can upload or live stream various video content. Unlike others, YouTube focuses on sharing video content over messaging and community building features. And then we have the Zoom. It's an online video conferencing platform where individuals can join an online meeting with small or large groups of people. Zoom also features tools and apps designed to enhance collaboration and productivity for groups during a session. So there are several different types of platforms, and they continue to improve on the platform so that they create a reality that allows you to feel that you are still working within the environment of a person-to-person contact.
Okay, now the concept here of the YouTube and the Facebook and the many others that you mentioned, which really broadcast, but in terms of the interaction for church services purpose, if I attend service on or if I'm streaming, let's say, if I'm streaming my service, so I am meeting in a physical building and I'm streaming, I'm using Facebook Live or I am using YouTube, individuals who are viewing, to what extent can they interact outside of asking questions? And I see in Zoom, I can have, for example, in the Adventist context, I can put my Sabbath school classes in rooms, and they can go, they can talk to one another, respond to one another. Is that kind of interaction possible in Facebook Live or on YouTube?
You have to, the usability of the platform depends on the need and the context in which you want to operate, okay? So what you find is that Zoom has become the preferred interactive platform for individuals who desire to form communities among themselves. But you can also do that with Facebook. You can have Facebook communities where individuals can go with shared and preferred experiences and relate one to the other. I am very much aware of individuals who have existing groups that exceed 50 or 60,000 people because they want to minister to people with needs within that opportunity. Even right now, those of you who utilize the WhatsApp has now gone one step further, and they have created WhatsApp community. So what they're trying to do is to create the opportunity so that people can have personalized contact. Because here's the point. While these existing platforms do create opportunities, they're beginning to realize that people still need people. And so these communities are intended to build the interaction and the interactive opportunities that's created in the platforms so that people can feel more that they are sharing one with the other. It cannot take away the fact that while these platforms do share these experiences, here's the point, Dr. Greene, there is still value in touching one another.
Well, I think we are together on that. Streaming definitely allows for greater coverage and greater reach. And someone just asked a question, which I think is important. They're saying rather that the COVID-19 was a blessing in disguise. It provided an enhanced method for the spreading of the gospel. And they're asking, to what extent do you agree? Now, I think you said earlier that COVID-19 was not what caused online services, etc. We had it before. It perhaps has forced us to sense the need to do catch up, so to speak.
Yeah, I said so earlier on, and not just that. Not has it only created that, but it has also created the opportunity to allow us to see the enormous potential that is inherent in the church. And here's the other point. The value of individuals who may be passive, but yet still talented in our congregation. It has given us an opportunity to leverage the giftedness of people so that within the body of Christ, ministries can be enhanced and the gospel can go forward.
I don't think there is any denying of the fact that there are significant benefits to gain from the technology that is available to us. But let us zero in on the traditional service that that I know. You pastor the congregation, you have your members there. COVID came, we were all forced to do service online. Sometimes the preacher went to the church with I remember during the lockdown, sometimes the law stipulated that the preacher could go with the participants in the service. Right. And so all the other members stayed at home. Here is the reality, though, that now that we have come out of the lockdown, many of the members have become accustomed to the online environment, and they have chosen not to return to the in-person service. Let's talk a bit about the impact of the online services on the participation of individuals in the local congregation, the local physical congregation. Go ahead.
It's a good drawback, and I think those people who are listening online will tend to take the rationale or the reasoning where you're headed. But I want to stop a little to take away subjectivity and to ask us to take a reality check. So here's the point, Dr. Greene. There is a dichotomy. We have to make a difference between attendance. Is asking ourselves the question, is attendance the same as participation? Worship experience, we got to understand, must take on a personal dimension. And then the secondary, which calls for fellowship. There are lots of individuals it's based on your preference, or you may enjoy the online experience more than the in-person in regard to expressing yourself without being judged. At the same time, creating an online church means doing more than simply providing a live streaming service each week. It's about establishing best practice for for a digital hybrid situation that allows for people to be engaged within a healthy environment, and to recognize that even though I may not be present physically, I can still have the expression of worship where I am in my own locale. Because there are lots of people, you have to agree, who may be in person but may not have that opportunity to express themselves, or may feel intimidated by expressing themselves within the congregation level. What I think needs to happen is that the church needs to get to the point where it needs to remind the people about what worship is all about, that encounter with God, and to recognize that even when I may not be streaming my service, I can still have that encounter with God. Make sense to you?
But that's the point, I think. The worship is an encounter with God, and it has to be personal before it becomes corporate. Most definitely, because it begins with me and my devotion to my Creator. But now we as ministers of the gospel, as individuals who are called to build up God's kingdom, must also recognize that everybody's not on the same level, and we have a responsibility to encourage and to nurture people. So my question to you, therefore, is for the individual who says, listen, I can participate, and you're making a distinction between participation and worship. The individual who says, I can worship, I can fulfill my religious duty or needs or desires online without going back to the local congregation. How do you relate to that person?
Okay, so here's my point. Traditionally, in-person services have sustained the church. There's no question about that. The members outside would agree that it offers a very powerful and empowering spiritual experience that has a divine ability to transform lives. But when congregations gather in unison in a location where it offers to give you that which it takes, it really lifts the individual. It's really amazing with the music. It lifts the heart. It elevates the spirit in a way that online services can never achieve. But what you find is that many people, I went to church this morning, and you will agree, I don't know if that's the same in South Leeward, lots of people, lots of churches are open to receive people, but there are lots of people who are not ready to go back to church. So what it is actually telling you is that the church needs to stop focusing on that and start focusing on engaging people. And it also suggests that the whole issue of having in-person and online still becomes valid, because you got to engage these individuals. And in doing that, you have to create opportunities for people to still feel as though they are interacting. The church need to come up with innovative ways that even though I may not be there in person, I still need to feel as though I am a part. And that's what leaders need to sit down and do, not challenge the reality, but see how we can either shorten the service, or we can do things within the service that creates the opportunity for us to still fellowship and still walk away as being blessed and elevated.
You know, one of the things I have shared with pastors in the South Leeward Conference is that during the pandemic, when everybody was being online, the thing about the online platform is that oftentimes people rehearsed, people made sure that they had the acts together, so that when you view, you're viewing a very high quality service. It is going to be difficult for somebody to move away from that to go to something that is mediocre. And so I think the challenge for churches, congregations today, is to ensure that the quality of their services is of a standard that is satisfying. Now, go right ahead.
You're dead on target, because I was going to head in that direction. Every morning since I worked at NCC, since I worked at NCC, every Sabbath morning, I will scan through the entire conference. At that time, we had about 23 congregations who were live online. I would scan through, and during the height of COVID, I would see the 40-something, the 100 plus, the 200 plus. But now, this morning, I took a cross review across, and I'm seeing 3 persons, I'm seeing 5 persons. What we have done is that we have thrown away the thing that made service appealing to the online audience. And we have now begun to focus on an in-person, I hope. But you are seeing the reality that you should not let your guard down, because, and I want to restate that, you cannot let your guard down, because you still have not just your members, but you still have an online viewership that continues to follow you. You have members who've been following you all through for 2 years, and you've got to be clear about what your focus is. Improve the quality, watch your length. The individuals who are coming online need to have solid content that meets the needs of people. And we are sure that when we do that, it is going to bring fruit for us.
At the same time, Pastor, I remember talking to somebody, you mentioned earlier West Jamaica. I remember talking to somebody from that conference, and they were complaining. Most definitely, lots of people like the quality of what they produce. But this person said to me, and this was an elder in a local congregation there, this person said they are mashing up the churches. And what they meant was that people were choosing to view the services, they liked the quality of what they were seeing, and were refusing to go back to their local congregations. Now that might be a challenge that I think the church will have to confront, because some persons definitely, there is the element of, and I may be saying too many things at one time, but there is the element of convenience. And how does that play in? Because when I stay home, I don't have to drive through the traffic. I don't have to worry about the time it would get me to prepare for church and get into church, and people are coming late and that kind of thing. Online, the service begins at a certain time, all the participants are there. So there is that challenge. But now, if my service goes fully online and I have no in-person, how would that impact me?
Let me go back to say this to you, Dr. Greene. I think we touched on that earlier. How would that impact me? You see, and I don't want to sound very facetious, but here's the point. Lots of times we find people wanting to go back, and why we want to go back? Because we want the money. That's why many of us want to go back. But the reason for what we do things is to minister. And the church has lost its sense of intentional planning, seeking to meet the needs of people. When people, and that's the power of YouTube. They tell you how many persons go to YouTube every day just to find out what happens to me when I die. People are looking for solid answers to questions. So when a church go online, you should not mistake the fact that going online must have a reason. You're not going online simply because you want to press that button to see what's going on. And I look at some of the live stream that people are having. You turn your back to the camera, the audio is not well, the lighting is terrible. When you're going online, you got to understand it's a high marketing religious statement that you're making. You have a purpose behind what you're doing. And so what COVID has done, it has also exposed the fact that people are not going simply because of what you have to offer, but what does what you have to offer meet the need that I have? That's a big statement there. And so every congregation need to understand that when you are going online, it must be needs-based and needs associated. What am I going to offer people? It is a conversation you're entering into people. And you cannot call people into a conversation if you've not been talking to them over the week. And that's the reason why people who have a Facebook page need to have active Facebook page conversing with people. If someone is lost in your community, you got to share it on the page to let people know that I am with you in the community. If someone significant has died in the community, the church shares that, because what you're doing is that you're relating to people. And so when Sabbath is coming, my pastor is speaking on Sabbath morning, this coming Saturday. Dr. Greene is going to be in my pulpit, and he's going to answer the question, what happens to me when I die? That's a significant statement. So as individuals, as churches who are going online, we have to say to them, when they go online, they must meet the needs of people.
Well, here is this now, Pastor. I think we are sharing some very important principles and concepts here. But now the whole idea of, I remember when we started these various social media platforms. WhatsApp is pretty late, but you know, you had Facebook and Instagram and the like, that people were discussing the impact on communication. And people were talking about whether or not, you know, communication is becoming more interpersonal, where the personal dimension, it wasn't there. People were at home and they were messaging one another using their smartphones. How is all of that? Now, it's a changing world, and I believe the church has to maintain a certain degree of relevance. At the same time, what drives the agenda of the church? You mentioned ministry, and we have to seek to minister to people with the aim of leading them into a relationship with Jesus. I want to be careful to say that I believe the church should explore all the avenues available to it for the building of God's kingdom. But we also have to be careful that we do not allow the people out there to set the agenda. I don't know if you're following me.
I'm hearing you. I'm hearing you. I'm hearing you. Because you see, again, I'm going back to what I had. And here's the point of being. It's not the people of the world setting the agenda. The fact is, the agenda is already there. But what you find is that as a church, we missed the opportunity over the years. And so in missing the opportunity over the years, I said it earlier, we're trying to find or to play catch up with what is going on right now. But the church on a whole, I remember those of you online who remember Robert Falkenberg. I credit him as being the guy who really revolutionized technology in the Adventist church. He leveraged us, the power and the potential that we have available to us. Look at Pastor Claudius Morgan. He preached an entire series that reached thousands of people across the world from a little studio in a room in Barbados with only about 8 or 10 of them. So what it is trying to show to us is the power that is available to us. But I want to draw a little further to say to you that whatever the reason, lots of people still like virtual worship. And I looked at it, Dr. Greene, 9 out of 10 Americans who have watched services online in the past year, they have said they are very satisfied, which is 54% of them, or somewhat satisfied, which is 37%. With the experience, just 8% say they are not too or not at all satisfied, according to Pew Research Center. Now, here's my question. How has the advancement of communication methods transformed this? Telephone at one time was a form of connecting and evangelizing. Then the global adoption of online social networking with social media. Individuals may feel free or more comfortable online than in person. Going online does not take away from the fellowship experience in the modern era. But we must find ways to engage each other and guests online to meet what we call the pastoral, the social, and the other needs. Because I'm of the opinion, solution to the challenge of online churches range is far-ranging, from hiring influencers to establishing and managing them. But we got to get to the point that in this new reality, the church has to find a way to engage these individuals so that they can still become part of the whole. So it's not about just putting a service online, but you need, now they talk about having social media managers, individuals who are trained and competent in engaging your people online. It's about ministering, but at the same time, engaging people.
Well, I want to deal with two things here, Pastor, to continue down the road that you're walking. You mentioned Dr. Falkenberg, who has been one of my favorites. You mentioned the online evangelistic series by Claudius Morgan and others. Here's my point. Now that the online platform has shown us that we can reach so much more, how do we respond to the challenge that it also brings? Because, you know, when I have an audience, you know, online, I don't have control of the audience the way I have control of the audience if I'm under a tent preaching in an evangelistic campaign, you know, the kind of captive audience. When you are at home in your living room, listening to me preach, if you don't like something I said, you have the option to switch, right? Now, the other thing is, you are not aware. You can look at Facebook and see that I had 3,000 persons or 3,000 views. That doesn't quite tell me whether those persons viewed for the duration of my sermon. My challenge is, what does the church now do? This is my first question, because there are two areas that I kind of want to explore. I'm aware that, you know, we don't have all the time in the world.
Let's take one at a time.
Yeah, but what does the church now do to be more effective in capturing these individuals? An individual is listening to me. I'm preaching in Antigua. An individual is listening to me in Barbados, and that individual decides they want to commit their life to Jesus Christ. How do I deal with that? Is the church aware of that particular challenge, and are they prepared to respond to it?
Good question. And probably that's probably the most important question. And here's the answer I want to give. I want to begin by saying to you, Dr. Greene, and to those online, I am an evangelist. Okay, let me take that back. I do evangelism. I think I've been, I think I had a successful...
All right, let me say it to you. You're an evangelist. Go right ahead.
Okay. But here's the point, Dr. Greene. We have to allow for the Spirit of God to take precedent over our methodologies. Did you get that?
Yeah, I'm with you.
Because what has happened in the past is that we have found ourselves, let me say, probably gaining grounds on manipulation rather than having the Spirit of God work. When you're dealing with social media, you have between 3 to 8 seconds to gain the attention of people. If what you are saying makes sense to them or meet their need, they're going to stay with you. That's why churches need to understand how long they are going to be online. Because if you're going online for 1 hour and you have nothing to give to people, there are offerings elsewhere that may be better quality. And so the respectful thing for them is to go where the needs are being met. That's why congregations need to be so clear, and churches need to be aware, and you said it earlier, about what they do when they go online. So
Doc, if I may interrupt you, Pastor, if I may interrupt you a minute, because while that may be so, there's the other element, because the individual who is listening may be truly in tune with what I am saying.
Yeah.
and may be convicted by the Holy Spirit that he or she needs to surrender to Jesus. But you know, there's always a struggle. There's always a struggle for an individual committing to God. I remember my own experience. There's a struggle. You know, the devil doesn't want you to make that commitment. God wants you to make that commitment. But when people are around you physically, who can sense that you are struggling, they may help you without, I'm not going down the road of manipulation. I'm talking about genuine assistance to people here. But when you're in your living room at home by yourself, there is nobody there. And what I'm suggesting is that if we're going to do online evangelism, for example, we have to be aware of what some of the challenges are and try to be proactive. You know, so is there a telephone number scrolling across the line that an individual can call and talk to a person? Is there a WhatsApp number that they can reach out to so that the human element, again, can come in? These are the kinds of things I'm talking about.
Right. I think I remember once walking out to the North Caribbean Conference office, and Pastor there's Wilmot James. We engaged in this similar conversation, and here's where I credit by saying that the church has not yet perfected the art of engaging evangelistically online with individuals. We have mastered the 10th evangelism, but we've not yet gotten there. But I think we are getting to what we do. So what congregations do is that when you're going online, there are several ways you can engage your people. One, you can pin your contact at in the chat button so that people can know where you are. You can also have a number scrolling across the screen that where you can reach to contact. You can establish online phone contacts with people. You can also have, I've seen congregation do virtual Bible workers. They can establish Zoom Bible workers in Zoom rooms for individuals who are desirous of making those kinds of decisions, as well as if you're free to text a message to someone within your vicinity that's prearranged so that you can make personal contact with these individuals. I think the church is moving to that direction. But what it does say is that congregations and conferences, and here's where I speak now as communication director of the union, we need to be more intentional about offering greater empowering through training sessions so that pastors and lay workers can take advantage of the opportunities that's before them for online contact with individuals.
I think that's part two of our discussion, right? But let's deal with another element here that is also of a great concern. Now I want to deal with the worshiper. Earlier, you raised the issue of participation versus worship, right? And we spoke a little to worship, talking about the fact that worship is a response. You know, when I am aware of who God is, his mercy, his love, his grace, his compassion, I respond in worship. Now, the God that we serve is a God of reverence. A lot of what happened in COVID, and I'm speaking out of not just assumption, but I have interviewed a number of individuals. A lot of what happened during COVID was that people simply viewed the services. You know, so you may be at home, you are viewing the service, and you're doing something else that you ordinarily would not do while you are at church. So I really want to talk about reverence, the impact of, maybe you may want to say it's lack of commitment, but the impact of some of these online services on reverence, our response to God as the superior being who deserves our full attention.
Beautiful. Probably I am not as old an Adventist as you are, Dr. Greene, but I recall when in the village where I grew up, when we had when they had conventions, and my mother decided that we're not going to the convention, we remain at home. And probably it's a good thing, but at times we detested it. But when we're at home, we will follow through the services in our home, doing every element of the service just as if we had gone to church. So someone had to do the song service, someone had to do the lesson study, the 10 minutes, and the singspiration, and then we had to read from Ellen White, so that it takes you all the way for 12. For 3 hours, we had to do that. What? Why am I saying that? It provided the ethic that still allowed for us to still worship God. The mindset. So that perspective was still there. Even during COVID, I found myself still adapting to that. So there is a plug in here for families to still recognize the value of worship and what it means, the encounter we meet with God. And parents have a solid opportunity and responsibility to teach that, and the church cannot do that for them. At the same time, irreverence is not dictated by location, but by the person's mindset in relation to God. And you said it right. Reverence should be maintained by the relationship with God when seeking to be in God's presence. And expressing reverence should not be dictated by the location or the method of seeking an audience with God. There is need now for educating and creating guidelines to standardize membership for individuals to speak about tithing, online attendance, and the mission of online churches. So in educating, we are now able to have a different ethic when the members remain at home for their online worship services.
But you see, Pastor, you shared a very important principle there. Your parent developed that discipline in you.
Yeah.
You know, they made you understand and appreciate the fact that the Sabbath is holy. Now, I've had people tell me that, okay, they're at home and they're, in fact, may I say, I've had experiences where a camera goes on that should not have come on during the service. You see somebody who is doing something that is not right, you know. Sometimes they're actually walking around with their phones and they're in the kitchen, they're cooking, they're doing different things. Because there is that temptation to be engaged otherwise. I think discipline is important here.
Yes.
And one has to start with the awareness that, hey, listen, this is God's time. This is not my time. And that's some of the challenge. And if our folks could understand, in fact, let me pause for a question here, because I think this may not be quite what I'm talking about, but it's an important question. So I'm going to ask it. The person says here, I see a negative spiritual component to this phenomenon. In the world, I don't hear much about virtual fitting, it looks like, fighting, virtual carnival, etc. Are cold members using the virtually as an excuse to stay home? Now that's a question to you, Pastor.
Yeah, there are lots of people who are hiding behind the facade that, you know, it's virtual, I'm taking it home, and are not engaged with God. And so they use that, I'm taking it online, to hide behind whatever may be happening to them, or they don't want to face the people who are before them. And that's why I indicated to you earlier on, Dr. Greene, churches have a huge responsibility. We as communicators, we as church leaders, we have a huge responsibility before us to educate and create guidelines and to remind the people of what the expectations are. Because virtually everything you do in person, you can also do online. One of the amazing things that I saw, I remember we had worship one morning, and one of our communicators in the North Korea, Sister Ambrose, had a virtual prayer service one for worship, and the way she set it up, we moved from island to island across the territory. It was beautifully done. If you have the correct individual using the technology, you can create amazing opportunities for people who are online. But those of us, and I'm coming back to the question, those of us who are part of this whole conversation need to understand that we have to do some serious educating. And I always say, people, I love online meetings, Dr. Greene, because sometimes I have two devices open on my desk. I'm taking two meetings at the same time. You know,
be careful now.
At the same time. But you also have to understand too that we need to create guidelines, because there are several people who need to understand that when God meets man, what happens? And let me go back to that again. The whole issue of reverence for Sabbath and respect for God needs to be cultivated, so that even if you are in the online space, you are still having that awe and reverence and respect for God. So what families need to do, you need to create a space in your home where you meet with God, and create that space where you have your worship services. I've been to the homes of seniors when the children come out, when it's worship time, and they put it on the big TV screen in front of them, and they don't move until the service is over. My wife would sing along while they're singing. The experience is what you make it, but the experience comes out of your respect for God and holiness for him. So even when we are doing prayer meeting at nights, I close my eyes and pray while the prayer meeting is going on, because if you don't participate, you miss the opportunity for the blessing that God has there for you.
This is what I want to, and maybe we can just, for the next 6 or so minutes that we have remaining, talk to this particular issue, because I see a big difference. We will not get through all I wanted to cover today, but there's always a part two, you know. I see a big difference, Pastor, between just watching a service on YouTube and being actively involved in a service. So, for example, let's say we're having prayer meeting, you mentioned, on Zoom in the nights. You know, it's relatively easy to even put people in breakout rooms and have them mingle with one another. But sometimes what you find is that individuals, because they have the ability to turn on and off their cameras, with their cameras off, they're absent. You know, you may see their name listed, but they're not even there sometimes. And you put them in a breakout room and you can't find them because they're not there. So can you therefore speak to some of the online ethic, the protocol that needs to be in place, that aid reverence, for example?
Yeah, and I'm glad you said so, because you see, I say to folk, when you're going to an online meeting, let's say we're going to prayer meeting on Wednesday evening, it is a planned meeting, just as how you're going to church. So you should prepare for that worship service. I say prepare for that worship service. And in preparing for that worship service, you must be prepared to turn cameras on, especially when you know that you are part of the service. Okay, I think it's disrespectful for individuals to feel that, okay, I'm part of the service, so I keep my camera off and I can do whatever I want to do. If you are, it's just as when you're in-person service, you have to educate and carry the ethic with you into the worship service, so that the experience is enhanced when we see each other and we dialogue one with the other. So I say to people, first of all, just as in preparing for this evening, I had to make sure that I had the right location. One of my contemporaries had to make sure that I have the proper background that you see I am using this evening, Dr. Greene, for the experience that we are sharing right now. We've come too far now for people to just take this thing as not ordinary and not as ordinary and not important. First of all, we have come too far. So let me give a little bit, do some home training now. You got to have the right connection for it. You got to make sure that you have the connection so that when you are appearing online, it is there. Then you have to make sure you have the right lighting for it, to make sure that you're visible to the people there. Your audio is okay. In my home, I have a backup battery so that even if that my internet is plugged into and my device is plugged into, so that even if the power goes, I know I'm still sustained for a period of time. I can end my online experience with you. So you got to make sure you do that. You find a space in your home where you are able to take your online experience and you participate. Now, Zoom does not allow you to hear different people singing at the same time. But what I've heard in attending some services, families in different homes were asked to sing different songs during the worship experience to allow us to know that we're still part of the fellowship. And so I encourage people, when you're online and you're in the service, you try to make sure that the service becomes meaningful to you. You find a song, and even though you're not being heard, you are worshiping God, and it is still okay for you to sing along. To when it's time to pray, you enter into this attitude of prayer and you still be part of the whole service, so that at the end of the service, you know that you have brought this experience into your own home. And that's what we want people to know. When it is Sabbath time and you can't go to church, you get ready for when you're able to take the service. Some people don't want to take it early. But when you're taking the service, it is respectful that you are part of the service and you're part of the whole, Dr. Greene.
Most definitely. And thank you so much for sharing that. Another important element, Pastor, is the matter of how individuals dress, and the whole idea of your cameras muting when you're supposed to be muted, not sharing. I've had some really unfortunate experiences. I was preaching one day, in fact, when
Tell me about it. I streamed the services for NCC for years, and I've seen it all. I don't think there's anything that I have not seen. I've seen it all.
Yeah.
And here's the point, and I'm saying it may sound simple. It may sound simple. But every now and then, I recall, you are aware, Dr. Greene, that when we were much younger and we had to go in Sabbath school, we to repeat the 13 morning words text every 13th Sabbath, we drill us at home before we go to church to make sure that what we did at home was done in the church. Every now and then, we have to do training to let people know how they can more effectively minister or participate with their online services.
My final question to you, Pastor. I'm really tempted to continue that, but Hebrews 10:25 says, "Do not forsake the assembling of yourselves together." Let's relate that to the online platform. I think you have answered part of it already, but I want to be very specific with this one now. What I hear you saying is that we must be mindful of the fact that there has to be a coexistence of the in-person service along with the online service. If I have shuttings in my service, I definitely would want my shuttings to be able to join in the service. The streaming would become important. If I'm sick in the hospital, if I go on vacation, I may want to tune in to my worship service. So apart from the other individuals who are not members of the Adventist faith, who I can reach online, there are sick and shutting and members who, for whatever reason, can't make it out to the worship center, who can find a lot in joining in on the service. Sometimes in our prayer meetings on Wednesday nights, we have individuals who once were members of that congregation but have migrated and they want to connect because in their congregations there is nothing happening on a Wednesday night, etc. So there are all of those kinds of things. But the question is, should I, as a Seventh Adventist, be content to only virtual church? Is that something you would encourage in the context of Hebrews 10:25?
Well, I see where you're heading, and you partially answered it, and that is, fellowshipping is something that can be had online as well as in person. And when I say so, the verbiage and the language has changed in the world today. We speak about connecting with each other. We speak about relating to each other, engaging people. So it's another word that the online experience offers us. How many persons are we engaging? How many persons are we connecting with? But in person, how many persons are we fellowshipping with? Now, let me be very frank and honest with you, Dr. Greene. Both will have to go ahead together. But you got to understand also the reality is that while I may have the ability to do that, we are beings as Christians created with this social to interact one with the other, to touch each other and to sing together, to be overwhelmed within an experience that brings us closer to each other. And I dare say, I sound like a preacher now, closer to God. So really and truly, there isn't anything to take away from the fact that I can see you and greet you and have this social interaction with you. That cannot be taken away. And there are lots of people, when they came together after COVID, they said one thing: I missed that. And so there is a theology around this whole coming together and fellowship and meeting each other. But, Dr. Greene, you've got to understand that I may come together and still not fellowship one with the other when I get to the church. So the church has to create opportunities. Those both opportunities needs to go on and on. There are people who interact better when they see online. They talk more. The space becomes a space that they want to interact because they are not intimidated by seeing one another. And at the same time, there are people who are inside the space but may choose not to do the same. What we want is to create an opportunity so that everyone is able to relate to one another. But as human beings, we cannot take away from the fact that shaking each other's hand. You know, we can send a letter to the King of Spain, but there is nothing better than taking a flight and going there and shake his hand. That makes you feel better.
Well, you know, our time is up. We have to stop here. But I wanted to say that there are some husbands and wives who seem to relate better virtually than in person. So one has to be careful about what's, you know, but it is a discussion that we need to continue, Pastor Philbert, and I want to thank you for taking your time. I know we had some challenges earlier, but that has been resolved, and I look forward to part 2 by the grace of God. Friends, as usual, Let's Talk will be back here next week again, 3 to 4 p.m. Atlantic Standard Time. We look forward to having you. May God bless you. And thanks so much, Pastor Philbert, for sharing your expertise. We have a number of areas to explore, to talk about. So I am looking forward to part 2 by the grace of God. I'll dialogue with you concerning arranging for that.
God bless you.